So, Romans chapter 1, verse 21 through 22 says this, "They know about God, but they do not honor Him or even thank Him. Their thoughts are useless, and their stupid minds are in the dark. They claim to be wise, but they are fools." And that's from the Contemporary English Version. But I thought it put it so clearly about the condition of the world. And I wanted to use that one. So, do you remember how Noah determined the flood was over? What did he send out first?
A raven.
A raven.
First he sent out a raven, and the raven never came back.
Right.
So then he sent out a dove. The dove come back.
It came back empty beak.
Empty beak when it came back. A week later, he sends out the dove again. This time, the dove comes back with what?
Olive.
A leaf in its mouth. All right, a week later, he sent the dove out again,
Did not return.
and the dove didn't come back. Then he said, okay, it's done. It's over. He knows that it's done. But he stayed in the ark because God's the one that told him when to go in. God's the one that shut the door. God's the one that opened the door and told him when it was time to come out. All right? And he comes out to an entirely different world. So remember, when he went in the ark, the world was full of people. When he comes out, the only people are Noah and his family. And the animals that he had on the ark, because all the other animals are gone too. So, quite a different world, and now it's up to Noah and his sons to take care of the world and repopulate. So, there's several things that we want to talk about today that are post-flood, that are important things that we need to remember post-flood. First of all is the Rainbow Covenant. The Rainbow Covenant. All right? So, one of the very first things Noah did after coming off the ark was what?
Built an altar.
All right, yeah, he built an altar, made a sacrifice. All right? Godly people have always thought of God before they thought of themselves. Noah comes off the ark, first thing he thinks about is God, and so he makes the sacrifice. And godly people always honor God with the first fruits. Remember Cain and Abel. Abel brought the first portions. Cain has brought something. God's honored with the first part. Proverbs 3:9 says, "Honor the Lord by giving him your money and the first part of all your crops." All right, so God wants the thing, the best thing. All right? So, Genesis 8:20. Would somebody read that for us?
Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it.
Okay? So there's that phrase, the clean animals, the clean birds again. Now remember, up to this point, man has never eaten an animal. So clean and unclean is something that was determined by God way before the food laws come into existence. Okay? All right. So he makes an offering. Now, when an offering is pleasing to God, how's it described in the Bible?
Like a pleasing aroma.
All right. Somebody read Ephesians 5:2.
Ephesians 5:2. And live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God.
All right, a fragrant offering, a sweet-smelling offering. There's always this idea that that's pleasing to God. What if an offering is not pleasing to God? What's it called? Somebody find Proverbs 15:8.
The Lord detests the sacrifice of the wicked, but the prayer of the upright pleases him.
Okay. That didn't have the word I was looking for in it. You reading from NIV? Franklin, you got the New American Standard? Proverbs 15:8.
The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is his delight.
Yeah, the abomination.
Abomination.
That's the way the King James, New American Standard have it. An abomination to the Lord. Now, what does that word mean? Abomination, what does it mean?
It's sort of like an insult.
Well, it means that which stinks,
Yeah, what?
or stinks, or is nauseating.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah, so it's more than an insult. It's definitely an insult, but it's even more than an insult. All right, so something that stinks or something that's nauseating. So Genesis 8:21. Let's go back to the story. Genesis 8:21.
The Lord smelled the soothing aroma, and the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done.
All right, and so the first part of that verse, it was a soothing. You say soothing?
Soothing aroma.
A soothing aromas. Something pleasant. All right, but God now makes up his mind. And notice God said to himself, said in his heart, I'll never destroy man like that again. Not that way. All right. And he goes on to say there'll always be cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. All right, that's an important verse to remember too, because you remember, I know you heard it, people talking about that the seasons are changing and that's a sign of the times the Lord's coming back.
He says no.
Then what it says right there, God said there'll always be.
Never change.
There will always be the 4 seasons. All right? So,
All in one day.
do what?
Sometimes all in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can happen. All right. So, in Genesis 9, God establishes his covenant with Noah. And would somebody read verses 9 through 11?
I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be cut off by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth.
Okay. And again, this verse right here would be additional evidence to point to that it was a worldwide flood, because we still have floods, right? And people's things get destroyed and people die. So this would be evidence, again, of a worldwide flood. God never would send another one of those. Worldwide flood. All right. But along with his covenant, and notice he didn't just make it with Noah, he made it with all of the animals that were on the ark, too. But what was the sign of this covenant? A rainbow. Somebody pick up at verse 12 and read through 15.
God said, "This is a sign of the covenant which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all successive generations. I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall come about when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow will be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and never again shall the water become a flood to destroy all flesh."
Okay. So the rainbow is the sign of the covenant. So every time we see a rainbow in the sky, do you think about God?
I think about God and I think about the pot of gold.
Oh, you'll find that pot of gold when we get to heaven.
Right.
How do you think the animals interpret the rainbow?
I think they have an instinct just like we do. When we look at that rainbow and remember God's covenant with Noah, and not just with Noah. I mean, he made it with Noah, but it applies to all of us, that he'd never destroy the earth by water again. I think they've got some instinct inside. They understand that.
More than people realize.
Yeah. Animals know a whole lot more than people
Just like,
give them credit for.
I mean, it's within the next couple of weeks, it's time to start putting out the hummingbird food.
Yeah.
Because they
The hummingbirds are coming back.
Yeah.
And they know where to go to find
They
stuff.
know to come to 13, 18,
I got to hurry up and get stuff planted so I can get them in the yard. But, they do know. They know where. I remember last year, I didn't put my hummingbird feeders out at the beginning. And the hummingbird kept coming pecking on the window. Because they knew where that feeder was supposed to be. So, anyway. But God decided he'd never destroy the earth by water again. He's not going to have those periodic purges of the earth to try to get rid of evil anymore. Why? The answer's in verse 21. Genesis 8:21.
He drank of the wine, became drunk.
No, chapter 8, not 9. Chapter 8.
Just read that.
The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done.
So why are there no longer periodic purgings?
because of his promise.
He promised. He promised, even though every imagination of a man's heart is evil from his youth. There's something that happened in the fall when Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. There's something that human nature inherited to do wrong. All right? It's like a child. You lay out the rules for the child. You don't do this. What's the first thing a child's going to do? They're going to do exactly what you said don't do.
Or ask you why.
Yeah, they may ask why, or either that, they're going to ask why, or they're going to do it to find out why. One or the other. But it's just, it's something in our nature that causes to do things that we know better than to do. All right?
Because I think God wants it to be our choice to follow Him.
He does want us to make a choice. He gave Adam and Eve that choice. That's why He put that one tree in the garden, to give them the choice. All right? So He wants us to choose to follow Him, but He knows there's something in us that tends to do the wrong thing. Okay. Not that He made us that way either, because He made us good. But there was something that happened with Adam and Eve, because there were no other living people but them. But there's something from their nature that we've inherited. Okay, so God gives special instructions now to the world. His first instruction is to go and repopulate the earth. I mean, that's an obvious thing. Go and repopulate the earth. The second thing that comes about, and I said earlier, up to this point, people only ate vegetables and fruits and nuts, things that grew on the plants. Did not eat meat. But that's about to change. Somebody read Genesis 9, 2 through 3.
Fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth and onto the birds of the sky, and every creature that moves along the ground, on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, now I give you everything.
Okay, it's interesting. For the fear of you and the dread shall be upon every beast. It's almost like before the flood, animals weren't afraid of people. Like all the animals were somewhat tame. But now He says, for the fear and dread of you upon the earth, and upon the fowl that moveth, and the fish, into your hand they are delivered. Everything has become meat for you. Now it's like, well, wait a minute. There's something changed in the animals now. And the reason there's something changed in the animals now is because we can eat them. And so people start killing the animals. Well, the animals run away. They're no longer not afraid. Now they are afraid. And so some animals become wild animals. Some animals, most likely the clean animals, became the domesticated animals. But even in domesticated animals, there's sometimes a little fear in that domesticated animal, because they know they're going to end up on your table. A lot of them. Not your dog and cat, unless you live in China. But the cattle and the pigs and the kind of meats that we eat, the lambs,
But when you think about it too, I don't know how they prepared it on the ark, but if you were inside a structure for, how long was it? 6 months, a year?
They were in there a little over a year.
Yeah. I mean, how you going to survive? I mean, even if you brought on a harvest full of food, that's all the plants and stuff are going to fade after a while.
Yeah, but they didn't eat them on the ark. It's only after they get off the ark that they become food.
Because you think some of them probably had babies, and but what if an animal died? By its young ones, but
I don't know. But the animals become food after they come off the ark, not before.
well, also, I mean, even though God brought them all to be on the ark, then they were essentially imprisoned.
Yeah, they
For
were.
years.
Yeah,
You know what they say about like zoo animals is it's hard to release them back into the wild, and something changes them after you
yeah.
have them in captivity for so long.
Right, something in them has changed. Now that man can eat meat, does something in man change? It's an interesting question because before the flood, how long did people live? Long, long, long time. After the flood, how long did people live? Not counting Noah, but getting over a couple of generations. How long do people live?
100 years, most.
Yeah, yeah.
They started eating that cholesterol.
Yeah, they started collecting cholesterol. All right, so yeah, everything after the flood changes. It's a different world now, altogether. Okay, another thing that gets stressed very much after the flood. Would somebody read Genesis 9:4?
Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood.
So where is life found?
In the blood.
In the blood. And this is part of Noah's covenant. You don't eat the blood. All right? So cook that steak till the blood stops running.
Right?
Because you're not supposed to eat the blood. All right? I know nobody wants it overcooked. Well, except Roy Miller. Roy Miller used to say when we'd have preachers meetings and we'd go out to eat, he'd order a steak and he'd say, cook it till it's done and then cook it some more. I thought, Roy, how on earth can you even eat that? All right, but Leviticus echoes the same thing. From Leviticus 17, it says, for the life of flesh is in the blood, for the life of all flesh, the blood of it is for the life thereof. So blood is important, and God is setting the scene to show us the importance of the blood. Now, there's already been a blood sacrifice before. Remember when God killed the first animal to make clothes for Adam and Eve, because he didn't like them skimpy fig leaves, and he wanted them clothed. All right, so that happened. Then there's the sacrifice of Cain and Abel. Abel did bring a blood sacrifice, and God accepted his sacrifice. So we know blood sacrifices have been started. But here now is stressing why they're important. Life is in the blood. And to go on and make it even more important, when somebody read Genesis 9:6.
Go ahead, babe.
Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made man.
All right, is God in favor of capital punishment?
Well, it says there.
Whoever sheds
Yeah. And there wouldn't be as many people in prison if we practiced it.
And also, don't you think that with starting this, that the blood is in the life, it's in God's mind that He wants to bring about that it's through the blood of Christ that we're saved?
Yeah, and that's why he's stressing the importance of the blood through this situation. But not only just humans, we didn't read verse 5, but if you go back and look at verse 5, if an animal attacked somebody and killed them, you were supposed to kill that animal.
Well, that's what they do most of the case.
Yeah. Today we will, yeah.
That's still good.
Today we'll do that to the animal. Well, why don't we keep all of this covenant? You know, if man sheds man's blood, Now, of course, remember, when we get a little bit later, we're going to find out a little bit more about mercy when you get to the cities of refuge. If you could prove it was an accident, that would be different.
I was just saying corruption and, somebody may set somebody up just to get rid of them if that's how it was done. So I know.
Yeah.
But something else, Paul gave approval for Stephen's death. So wouldn't some of Stephen's blood be on Paul?
Yes, it would have been, because he was the one.
There is a point of having some mercy, but then if they're not accepting mercy.
Yeah. So,
But at the same time, Paul did condone Stephen's stoning. But then God used Paul to show him what it was like to shed that blood because of all the treatments that Paul had to go through. He got whipped to the point of one more strike and he would have been dead and shipwrecked and persecuted and so forth.
Yeah. And so, I think from what we can take from it, God is definitely in favor of capital punishment. But there does have to be some sense of mercy and understanding exactly what happened first. But this is just blatant, all these just shootings. People just go out for no reason and start shooting people. I would say capital punishment is what they need. Because that's just crazy. No respect for anything that way. All right, so here we go. Here, God established this covenant. These things have taken place, and they're still important things still today. All right, but now think about it. Who's here on the earth? Noah and his family. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. That meant Noah was a righteous man. Okay? And he's in the faith chapter in Hebrews 11, so we know he's a righteous man. All right? So, how does sin come back into the world?
With some...
Let's start. Somebody read Genesis 9, 20 and 21.
Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent.
All right, so sin comes back into the world with Noah. The righteous man brings sin back into the world. Now, some people want to say, well, the earth has changed. Things have changed. And maybe Noah didn't know by drinking that he would become drunk.
He didn't know that it would make him drunk when he was drunk. He had no...
Yeah, I don't know if he knew or not. But, I mean, the world has changed.
Yeah, I mean, did God tell him not to drink the wine?
Apparently not. And apparently, if you leave fruit juice long enough, and especially if you add a little sugar in on it, straight from the fruit, it'll turn into wine. It'll ferment.
And then plus the fact that if you have one drink, which they say one drink won't hurt you, but you're not drunk. It's not until you take multiple drinks that you get drunk and you don't know what you're doing and staggering around and everything. Not that I'm condoning drinking, but
You had something to say?
Yeah, I could kind of believe a little bit if they want to say that the apostolic changed the environment a little bit. But in the New Testament, it says at the time of the flood, people were eating and drinking.
Exactly.
The drink would imply there'd be some drunkenness, so Noah at least might know the feeling of getting to it, but he kept drinking.
Okay, yeah, a good point, that they were eating and drinking before the flood. So, and the drinking does imply, and Jesus implies that as he's talking about that story. So here's this issue. He must have known something. Maybe he didn't know the fermentation process, but I don't know that we can excuse him because he got drunk. And anybody knows, if you know anything about drinking, if you drink enough, you're going to get drunk.
And then you know what to do.
Exactly. You don't. And so I don't know that we can exactly excuse him. He got drunk. And drunkenness, the Bible clearly states, is wrong. So,
This also notes that even though Noah was a righteous man, he loved God, God loved him, that a righteous person can fall because we're not perfect, but God still can take you and pick you up when you pick yourself up, and he can use you.
right, exactly. So here's the thing. As soon as the righteous man comes off the ark, and we don't know exactly how long after they come off the ark that this took place. All right? Had to be long enough he grew a vine
That took a while.
that produced a crop.
Yeah, it probably took 3 years of
Yeah,
since he planted it, 3 or 4 years before it started producing grapes.
right. So it's been a period of time. We don't know exactly how long, but it's been a period of time. But here's the thing. The devil didn't go away. The devil is always there, and who's the people he wants to go after? The righteous ones, right? That's because he ain't gonna worry about the rest of them. He's got them. So he wants to go after the righteous ones, and where he ends up going is always in our weakest point. All right? So we always got to be aware that he's there. He certainly was with Noah. But the situation gets even worse. He's laying in his tent. Now he's in his own tent. All right? And he was uncovered, which means he's naked. In his own tent. Well, that's not sinful by itself. You're in your own place, right? But somebody read verse 22 of chapter 9.
Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside.
Okay, and then verse 25.
He said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers."
All right.
But one of the brothers backed in when he found out.
The 2 brothers. The 2 brothers back
Covered
then.
him up.
Right.
And
Now,
blaming him for his stupidity.
okay. So why does he curse Canaan? Canaan is Ham's son. Why does he curse Canaan?
Because he went told.
All right. I did quite a bit of digging and thinking, trying to think this through. And maybe there's more to this story than what we see on the surface.
My thoughts is that he cursed him because he told, and he just didn't cover him up. Why
Okay.
didn't he just cover him up and not say nothing?
Yeah. And that's a good point. And it kind of goes along with a lot of the commentaries I looked at, including John Wesley and Albert Barnes and even College Press Bible Study Textbook Series, says that the words, and I looked up the word when he looked upon him and he saw his nakedness. The word means he got some kind of pleasure out of it. Okay? Now, exactly what kind of pleasure? I don't know. Some suggest a homosexual act. I don't know that I'd go that far. But somehow or another, he got some kind of pleasure out of it. And then went outside and apparently it was Canaan first. The reason Canaan gets cursed is apparently Canaan came in first. Canaan told Ham. Ham went in, got the same kind of pleasure that Canaan got, and then they start telling and laughing about it.
It was Ham's descendants who were the enemies of Israel.
Do I?
Ham's descendants, the enemies of Israel.
Well, think about his son's name. Canaan. The Canaanites descend from Canaan. The Canaanites are the ones the Israelites run out of the promised land. Or supposed to have. They didn't, but they were supposed to have. All right? So here's the curse that we need to think about, is that the Canaanites were cursed by God because of this. But now, the other two actually are blessed. All right, now let me think before I get ahead of myself. Oh yeah, let's save that. We'll talk about that. Might have to be next week. What time is it, Larry?
Next week.
Not next week. And not the next, yeah, we'll do it Easter Sunday. It's what?
10:45.
10:45. It's time to, well, my alarm didn't go off.
Maybe still have it in silent mode.
The phone's in silent mode, but usually the alarm goes off anyway. I don't know. All right. So, we'll stop right there, because it's time to stop. And we'll talk more about the two sons and next time, 2 weeks from today. All right.
That's interesting.
All right, Chad, would you lead us in prayer?
Yes, sir. Father God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to come and read through your word, especially with the promises you made after the flood. I think we remember that as we go out here and live our daily lives. Keep those promises with us. That you bless the time of worship, right to have together in Jesus' name.